I'm joined now on the set by our French politics editor, Mark Proman. Mark, the government is trying to show that it's tough on this situation. 11 people have been arrested since the killing of Samuel Paty. Tell us a bit more about what's being done.
Yes, the government wants to show an iron fist that it's there, it's reacting not only by making speeches, but also by taking action. So the announcement by the interior minister, who's in charge of the police this morning on the radio, that dozens of people have been arrested is a way of showing the French that things are being done. What's interesting is that those arrests are not necessarily linked to the assassination. They're essentially of people suspected of expressing support for the attack or the attacker or against the teacher online. And so this is why the net can be very wide, and the arrests are going to continue throughout the next few days, because usually after a terrorist attack, you essentially focus on the investigation and those linked to the attack. Here, obviously, there is a willingness by the French government to say that, okay, arresting those directly culprit for the attack is important, but we also have to change the dynamics of the environment. Saying someone is insulting the Prophet can now be punishable by arrest and maybe also in front of a court. That's what the government intends to do. The problem is that behind those spectacular actions, there needs to be results. And there's nothing for now that can guarantee that those people will be condemned in the end, because in terms of legislation, the situation is still very ambiguous here in France.
And this focus on social media is quite interesting, because there was recently a law that was proposed by the French government for online hate speech that didn't pass.
Yes, absolutely. This was a concern. This was prompted by the attack in New Zealand. The French president, together with the New Zealand prime minister, they decided that really hate speech online is a big, big issue. It's essentially motivating people to go buy a knife, buy a rifle, and kill in the name of a religion or an ideology. In New Zealand, it was the far right. Here, it's a different story, of course, in this case. And so the idea was essentially to push the online platforms to withdraw material that could be deemed inflammatory very quickly. However, the law that was proposed by the name, the law is called as the Loi Avia. Laetitia Avia is a lawmaker for the République En Marche in power. She proposed this law, but it was essentially deemed as unconstitutional by the Constitutional Council. There were it's a legal issue, because obviously the frontier between hate speech and freedom of expression is a very thin one. And so the Constitutional Council said there was too much in this law that was about essentially going after people expressing their opinions. And so it needs to be essentially revamped. And so that's what the government now wants to do. It wants to use, if I may say, this opportunity to try to push this law again to the forefront, change it a bit, to make it acceptable by the Constitutional Council, and allow those arrests started this morning to really bear fruit, instead of being just police operations, because there is a huge emotion here in France and then nothing happens. We'll have to see whether this law can be accepted by Parliament. This should not be a problem, but more problematic will be the Constitutional Council down the line, because the Constitutional Council is there to say, well, okay, emotion is understandable, but emotion doesn't mean a law should be accepted. It should be accepted only if we deem it legal.
Mark, thanks so much for that. Our French politics editor, Mark Proman. Thank you.